Hey everybody, Coach Toolshed here, and today I'm going to be talking about the recent developments that have happened over in Europe once again with the loot box fiasco. Stuff that I've been going over the last couple of weeks in a couple other different videos, specifically regarding EA and how they've decided to thumb their nose up at the Belgian authorities who said that, yes, in fact, you have gambling in your games and you need to take it out, and they decided not to do it. And so what has happened this week is we've gotten news that an international tribunal formed in Europe and including one U.S. state has formed and has signed a letter to work together to examine the issue of loot boxes in gaming, specifically in regards to gambling. Now, why is this important? Well, I think it's pretty obvious, because what happened last week with EA deciding to thumb their nose up at the Belgian authorities, what maybe some people might not know, I'm sure the European listeners I have are well aware of this, but the EU headquarters is actually in Belgium. So the fact that EA stuck their nose up, well, they did it right in the EU's backyard. So obviously they're trying to force this into a court situation. And so this is one word of warning. I see a lot of people making videos, cheering this on, and this might be a good thing, but it could also be a bad thing. Because what if this international tribunal gets together and they decide that, no, in fact, this isn't gambling and gamers are just out of their minds? Now, I think with the language that we've been seeing from some of these countries, I don't think that's where they're going to land, but that is a possibility. They could get together, and who knows what sort of backdoor shenanigans could happen. Anything could happen. We don't know. So just because these countries have decided to work together on maybe making a possible solution, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be beneficial to us as gamers. We'll have to wait and see. But this is pretty big news, and this ties in directly with the stuff that I've been talking about over the last couple of weeks in a couple of my different videos. So I felt it was definitely necessary to bring it to your attention. And that is not the only big news that has come out this week in regards to loot boxes that is not going in the publisher's favor. That is coming out of Australia, and their parliament had commissioned a study that wanted to look into loot boxes and how they relate to gambling specifically. And what they found is not at all good news for games publishers, because the study has found that it's basically what we already know. That loot boxes trigger certain individuals who have gambling tendencies, specifically problem gamblers. And there's been a lot of different articles written this week. You can look at any of the big tech sites. They'll have this article posted about Australia. There's a lot of big YouTube channels did videos about this as well. But I looked through some of the findings from this report, and there was a couple things that I pulled out of here that were really pretty interesting to me. And the first thing that I saw is that what they found is that loot boxes, specifically randomized loot boxes, trigger something in a gambling addict, something with a problem gambler that makes them spend more and more money on random loot boxes, especially as compared to the average gamer. But the study found that when it came to one-for-one microtransaction purchases in games, the same discrepancy did not exist. What I'm saying is, similar to Battle Royale Fortnite, I use this example a lot because it's a popular game that a lot of people know about. So if you go and buy a skin in the Battle Royale, it has a price right there, and it shows you what you're going to buy, and it has a dollar amount. And if you want to spend that money on that item, okay. And so that, what the study found is that that sort of microtransaction did not trigger gambling addicts to spend more and more and more money. It was only randomized loot boxes that triggered the problem spending. That, I think, is a key finding in this report. And there's something else that they discussed, and this is something that I've seen more broadly reported on. That last point I haven't really seen too many people talking about, and that, I think, is probably one of the most important things you can pull out of that study. The other big thing that the study found that I thought was they showed a direct correlation between more problematic gambling addicts and spending more money on loot boxes. So it wasn't, like I said before, it wasn't just that the normal gamer didn't spend to the same amount. It's that the worse a gambling addict is in real life, the more they're prone to spend on loot boxes. And of course, this is a situation where you were dealing with a lot of impressionable younger players that can be affected by this, and this could lead to problems down the road. Now, the study is quick to point out that it is not conclusive. This is the only big study that's really been done about this, but it was over 7,000 participants, so it's not a small study necessarily. So that's something that I think is very important. And so one thing I will say, a little caveat here, is I wish it was a country other than Australia. No offense to my Australian listeners, but Australia is kind of known for being the big bully on the block when it comes to swinging the ban hammer when it comes to different entertainment items, video games especially, and I'm sure my Australian listeners would have to agree with that. Australia is well known across the globe for being one of the most strict countries when it comes to saying, you shan't have that in your possession. So take this with a little grain of salt that it is Australia. Like I said, no offense to my Australian listeners, you guys are great. But it is worth pointing out that Australia is already really strict with that stuff. But hey, it's a big country, and so if that's one more part of the world, one more market that gets this sort of thing enforced, in addition to the EU, and we've already seen, so now Washington State and Hawaii at least has representatives that are looking into this, and we know there's other states as well, but those are the two ones that we've seen most prominent here, leading the charge when it comes to looking into these loot boxes. Now, like I said, this could turn out to be absolutely nothing, and they could get together and say, nope, these aren't gambling. But based on some of these studies we've seen, based on some of the language we've seen, and certain countries, like I said, Belgium and the Netherlands already declaring that, yes, these are gambling. And last week we also got reports that Finland was jumping in and doing an investigation of their own. So as we see all these international gambling regulators coming together to look into the situation, I think one thing we can be sure of is that at the very least these governments are going to want some sort of say. And now this is a different topic, and I have seen some people bring up in my comments in my other videos, do we really want government oversight over games, and is that a good thing? Well, I can see that point, and I can fully agree with you in certain areas. I don't like really strict government oversight over anything. However, when it comes to public safety issues, sometimes there needs to be regulations involved, especially when it's going to be coming to our children going to have access to this. And as we all know, it's nothing for anyone to just go into one of these consoles and set up an account, and they're not doing any background check on it. You can put whatever information you want, set up an account, and there you go. There's your account. All the child needs is an access to a working credit card, and they can just be swiping away. So this is something that definitely needs to be looked at. Look at anything that is considered gambling in any country. It's regulated to a certain degree to protect the public. And it goes to any other sort of industry. Let's take a restaurant, for example. You go out to eat, right? That restaurant is subject to a health inspection. And if the health inspection comes in and deems like, oh no, what you're doing in here is a danger to the public, well, they can shut you down or at least levy fines on you and force you to correct your behavior. It's very similar. It's just a public service sort of regulation because, let's face it, these gaming companies aren't going to regulate themselves. The only time they'd make any changes is when the players strike back and start hitting them in the wallets. That's the only language that these fools understand. They only care about one thing. It is the dollar sign. They don't care about providing us with quality games anymore. They just want to get the money. And what's funny is we've already seen that these big companies have issued studies to try to understand what triggers these gambling mechanisms in our brain to make us, try to buy these loot boxes. Guys, I wish you guys would commission a few studies that try to study what we actually want to play and what makes an enjoyable experience for the player. Because I guarantee you, it ain't opening randomized loot boxes. If you want to open an online betting store, go do that. If you want to run an online poker site, go do that. Stop bringing it into my mainstream video games. Stop it. When you guys going to learn your lesson? Apparently public backlash isn't enough. And the government's outright telling you to take the crap out of your games isn't enough, EA. So, we'll see where these international tribunals go now. Because that's what you brought it to. Now it's a worldwide issue. Congratulations, game companies. You've made worldwide fools out of yourselves. And I hope that this stuff gets slapped in your face because it needs regulation. Because you guys got out of control. That's all I gotta say. I'll talk to you guys later. I am Coach Toolshed. You guys let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm sure some people won't necessarily agree with this position, and I know some people are like, yeah, go. International panel, let's do this. Well, let's just have a little bit of caution there because it might not work out the way you think. Let me know what you guys think. I'll talk to you all next time. I'm Coach Toolshed, and as always, you keep it turned to 11.